Try it again. I call to order this regular meeting of the Monument Board of Trustees, June 21st, 2021. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott is noted absent. Trustee Clark is noted absent. Trustee LeKind.
Here.
Trustee Romanello.
Here.
Trustee Stevens.
Here.
Trustee Unruh is noted absent.
Thank you. Before us, we have a consent agenda. Is there any modifications or a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Trustee LeKind.
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Trustee Romanello.
Yes. That motion passes 4-0. First item, or item number 3 on the agenda, introduction of Megan Harrington. Mr. Foreman.
Yes. Megan, would you please stand? This is Megan Harrington. She has an 18-year career, worked with multiple jurisdictions in the Front Range. Most recently, she spent 13 years with the city of Colorado Springs. The past 6 years, she was the Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development. Megan has experience in multiple facets of planning, including comprehensive planning, urban renewal, infill and redevelopment, economic development, and greenfield planning and development. Her most recent accomplishments include Historic Colorado Springs, the Historic Preservation Plan for the City of Colorado Springs, a short-term rental permitting program, and Retail Colorado Springs. The rewrite of the City of Colorado Springs zoning and subdivision codes. She has a reputation for prioritizing communication and collaboration with citizens, community partners, and elected officials. Me and the mayor and Debbie met her on a Zoom call, and we're very impressed with her. She stuck to her guns, didn't always agree with things that we talked about on that Zoom meeting. And I have witnessed that since then, that we've had some conversations you'll hear about tonight, to where she doesn't always agree with other people, and she sticks to her guns and supports the town that she works for. And we really appreciate that. She's hit the ground running and has taken on a lot. I know you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, but she's done an amazing job already in the first week or so that she's been here. So welcome Megan Harrington as our new planning director. Megan, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Thank you. Mayor and trustee members, thank you very much for having me. I saw the position come open and I thought what a great opportunity to take that next step and work for a great town. I live locally, not too far from here, and the Front Range has been my home for 18 plus years and worked in planning departments from Pueblo County, El Paso County, Colorado Springs, and now Monument. So I'm happy to be here and happy to represent the town of Monument. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. And on behalf of the board, welcome. And we look forward to some of your ideas. Like Mike mentioned, I've already heard about some of them, and I think the board looks forward to hearing some of your ideas, especially when it comes to community engagement, which we're always looking to improve on. And planning and development is always a lost area when it comes to community engagement. So we look forward to that. Thank you. Any other board comments before we move on? Okay, next item, item 3B, home rule survey results. Ms. Vandenhoek.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. We have David Flaherty from Magellan Strategies to present the results of the home rule opinion survey that was conducted a few weeks ago. So I will let David take it from here.
Thank you, Madeline and Mr. Mayor and trustees. Good to see you tonight. Madeline, can you drive the bus on this survey? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And again, we appreciate the opportunity of doing another important survey of the town's voters regarding home rule. This survey was conducted from May 25th to June 3rd. And Madeline, if you could go to the here, I'm sorry, if you could go to the next slide, on slide 2. Thank you. Yep, maximizing it. Yep. What were our objectives? The primary objective of this survey was to measure, understand monument voter opinion of changing the town's form of government from statutory rule to home rule. Everybody, please understand this does not happen. Very few municipalities and cities in the state of Colorado are still statutory, so this doesn't happen very often. It's a unique process. We've done 2 other home rule projects for the town of Eagle and the city of Castle Pines. We wanted to measure perceptions of what home rule is and being informed of the process and their thoughts and understandings of approving a new town charter and understanding why voters would support or oppose home rule after being informed of the fundamentals of the process. So next slide, Madeline. Okay, the survey interviewed 382 registered voters in the town of Monument that are likely to vote in the 2021 election. As I mentioned before, the survey was conducted from May 25th to June 3rd. We used text messaging by sending a text with an image of the town's logo on it, as well as the town's email list to foster engagement in this survey. The overall responses have a margin of error of 4.9% at the 95% confidence interval. Next slide. Here's the survey demographics. These demographics by age and party affiliation are very similar to what they are in an odd year election, not based on registration. So everybody should please understand that. Next slide, Madeline. And I know this is a lot of data in numbers, but I want everybody to understand the survey results are weighted based on close to what the turnout demographics were in the 2019 election and the 2017 election. If you look at this table, you can see that Republicans make up approximately 50% of all of the votes cast, unaffiliated about 35%, and Democrats around 15%. But also more importantly, the age ranges. Seniors 65 and older will make up just under 25% roughly of the vote. So this is the data that we use to weight these survey results in case there's any questions regarding that. So next question, next slide. First and foremost, we're just measuring familiarity here. How familiar are you about the town's consideration and decision to review the process of changing the form of government from statutory to home rule? Only 8% said they were very familiar and 23% somewhat familiar. So, we have just a little over 35% of voters understanding that this effort is being discussed and considered by folks. So there's work to be done there. And, awareness is relatively low. That's okay. But we want to know where that is. So next slide. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of a home rule form of government? Not surprising at all, 50% of people saying, I don't know what that is. 36% favorable, 16% unfavorable. Why did we ask this question? Because we want to know, are there any negative connotations? I know home rule was approached nearly 20 years ago, a while back, and we just wanted to know, was there any lingering negative effects from that election? And there are none. These numbers are very normal at the very beginning of the process as it's being considered. Next slide, Madeline. Home rule uninformed ballot test. So basically, this is reading to folks this statement in question. The first step to change a home rule form of government from statutory to home rule is putting a ballot question before voters. The ballot question will ask voters to approve or reject the formation of a home rule charter commission. In the same election at the same time, on the same ballot, voters also choose fellow residents to serve on the Home Rule Charter Commission. Knowing this information, if election were being held today and there was a ballot asking voters to approve the creation of the charter and select members to serve on the commission, would you vote yes or would you vote no? 41% said they would vote yes and approve it. 23% said that they would vote no and reject it. And 36% of folks were undecided. Again, a slight plurality are saying they would vote for it. As you can look at the breakouts by voter subgroup, we can see that Republicans and Republican men, which will make up half of the vote, More than 50% of them are already there, but there's still a significant number that are undecided. Democratic voters and unaffiliated voters are less likely to support it out of the gate from what they understand right now. That's very apparent. Only 34% approve of it among unaffiliates, 29% said they would reject, and 37% undecided. So again, these numbers are very normal, but this is the perception of where it is right now. What is this? I don't really know. So obviously it's a special survey, so now we need to educate and inform. So next slide, Madeline. And basically, this is what people saw. We're now going to share information you regarding the process. After hearing or reading the information, indicate if you're more likely to vote yes and support it, or if you're more likely to vote no and oppose it. So let's get started. And next slide, Madeline. And basically, these information questions spoon-fed to each respondent what exactly home rule is. Under a home rule form of government, monument residents are given a greater authority to create laws that meet the needs and expectation of residents rather than having a one-size-fits-all statutory system. 93% of Colorado's municipal residents live in a home rule community. If approved, Home Rule Charter Commission would have 180 days to draft a new town charter. So people are starting to understand, okay, what's this charter stuff all about? So they got, 180 days to come up with this new charter, and then it's going to be voted on in a future election. Next slide, Madeline. Federal and state laws under a home rule form of government still apply, but home rule municipalities have the power to make laws and policies regarding local issues within minimal state intervention instead of using a one-size-fits-all. Question 5, which is very important in the state of Colorado, letting people know under a home rule form of government, the town of Monument still must abide by Tabor Amendment. For Republicans, that's very, very important because they like Tabor. So do people generally overall. At the same time, folks, some folks do not. They look at it as a restriction on needed spending and so forth. But again, knowing where Tabor stand is usually very important. Next slide, Madeline. Under a home rule form of government, the trustees will be able to protect and preserve the uniqueness of monuments, values, and culture, et cetera, et cetera. So next slide, Madeline. So after reading the 7 message questions, this is how they ranked the percent that said that they were more likely to vote for home rule and support it, or a home rule commission for that matter. Like I mentioned, Tabor number 1, 7 out of 10 voters said, yep, if Tabor's still in place, I like what I'm hearing. 2, under home rule form of government, they're able to protect and preserve the uniqueness of monuments, values, and culture. 3, after a new town charter is drafted by the home rule, voters would have an election and get to vote on it. It's local control. Voters like that. They always have. Next slide, Madeline. And we go through the rest of them. But overall, all of the messages sound out pretty positive. We did consider some negatives to home rule, but they're really, in all honesty, folks, are not a long list of what are the negatives of home rule. There aren't many, but at the same time, the community either has to support or reject it. Next slide, Madeline. So we have the informed ballot test. So after they understood the fundamentals of what the process is all about and what it would mean, we then asked them, now that you've read some information, we're going to ask you again, would you vote yes and approve the creation of a commission and at the same time select members to serve on it? Would you vote no and reject it? So 2/3 of voters, 62% said, yes, I would vote and approve this if it was put before me. As you can see, among Republicans and seniors, 2 of the largest voting blocs, support's relatively overwhelming from 66 up to 78%. Democrats come around a little bit. So to unaffiliated voters, we're just under half. That's the way you need to break down the electorate and look at it. We're saying, is this worth our time putting it before voters? And based on the information we read, and that is really the fundamentals of it, it looks pretty good that people would be willing to say, okay, let's get together, let's give this a chance and talk about a charter, knowing full well if this comes out poorly and I don't like where it is, I'm going to vote against it. So next slide. And that's what we asked. So after that, we said, okay, now that you know the facts, tell me why you would vote yes and approve for this ballot measure to create a home rule form of, government, if you will, local control, local control, local control. That's a very sacred and powerful thing. And people understand if this is going to give us more local control, especially to be very honest with you in these times of COVID, for public health, for mask ordinances. That's what people are relating to right now on this. And that has a big part of it. Some people are not happy with the, public health and safety going too far ordinances from coming out of COVID. That's how they've, followed this. That's why the second major theme, like the idea of not having to follow state or government statutes. I like to preserve monuments' character. But overall, that's what really rings true. We get to decide, how we are governed, and the laws that, we want. Understanding doesn't mean that we are immune from state laws or tailored. Next slide. And then again, this is just a word cloud of all of the open-ended responses that were said. As you can see, local control, community, better, people, town, those themes are coming through. Next slide, Madeline. Okay, why 18% of voters would oppose a home rule form of government? A lot of the folks are center or center left that responded to this question and don't like it. They have perhaps political differences, and I'm being brutally honest with all you, so please respect that. If you read these open-ended responses, some people feel that they disagree with either some actions of either prior boards of trustees. I'm not pointing any fingers when I make those statements, but I encourage you to read them. The town of, here's one column, the lower left-hand corner. The town of Monument board members cannot be trusted with this type of decision. They don't understand basic town business. We need a more dedicated, experienced leaders to handle this type of initiative. There's an anxiety coming through there. Monument local government already disregards state government statutory authority on a whim to appear to a right-wing base. I don't trust that. Giving you more legal authority would lead to more and more radical local laws. Look, this is in the post-mortem of the days of COVID, okay, where there are very understandable disagreements on, state regulations versus local. You're not the first community to go through this, folks. I'm just letting you know, and we're just trying to report on the data here. But overall, too, people want more information, and they're like, this is such a weird idea. I've never heard of it before. I appreciate what you're telling me, but I need to research this more myself. And that also will cause people to stay in the opposed column until they have more information. Next slide, Madeline. And again, here's the word cloud on what people were saying. Need more information, need research. So, that came through loud and clear as well. Next slide, Madeline. Okay, how did the ballot measures change? Well, support for this was at 41% and moved up to 62% of 21 points. Opposition declined by 5, and undecided voters dropped by 16 points. Next slide. If you look at it by the major voting subgroups, and again, we're typically looking at an odd year turnout of about 3,500 people, 4,000 because this is a very local issue. Overall support increased by 21%. Among men, it went up 16 points. Among women, it went up 27 points. Among seniors, 25 points. It went up across all major party affiliations, including Democrats and unaffiliated voters by significant numbers. Although they didn't reach a majority among unaffiliates and Democrats, they're still pretty darn close. So overall, you can see here, people want to give this a shot. They want to consider it. They're interested in it. And it's likely, if this was put before voters, if they're informed and understand what it is and what it is not and how this will work, people will very likely give this a try. Next slide. Just some final thoughts and observations. Like I said, changing a form of government is not something that happens very often in Colorado. Therefore, it's not surprising about the unawareness or people not being familiar with home rule and how it comes about and who has it versus what statutory home rule is. Uninformed ballot test supports at 41% to elect a commission and to elect for them to have a commission moving forward to design a charter. That's not bad. It's pretty average from the other 2 towns that we've done this work for in the last 4 years. After learning about the home rule process, voter support does get up to 62%, and so forth. Like I said, a strong majority do want to give this a try from what they've learned from the survey. Continuing on, Madeline. Again, primary reason these folks want to give this a go, increase in local control and preserving monuments' character. The primary reasons voters oppose it is there's a difference of political issues, and also people need more information. And again, among the folks that are still 20% undecided, they want more information. But just from our experience of having done and been through 2 of these elections, and both Eagle, the town of Eagle that is, and the city of Castle Pines moving forward, these numbers are very similar to not only their vote, but also what their final vote was on the commission. But I would just say this, and my final point, if it's referred to the ballot, it's likely to be approved by voters. However, voter approval will be difficult if voters are uninformed about the process, uninformed about what it is, and most importantly, if the members of serving on the Charter Commission are not representative of the community. The more diverse and voices that are heard that serve on the commission, the more likely that this will pass because everybody will have something into it. So the work that we did in Eagle as well as City of Castle Pines was very collaborative across aisles, if you will, and they really went the extra mile. So if you replicate that, and that's how this comes together, we would expect it to have strong community support and improve the town itself. So with that, I will just finish up and we'll take questions.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, you mentioned that our demographics are such that we're about 50% Republican and 35% independent. So in your last comment, you mentioned that one of your understandings of a key to success is a representative commission that puts it together. Since that is done through election process, how do we ensure that the right percentages are on the board to represent the people accordingly?
Well, it's a very good question. But to make sure, that, from political affiliation being represented, there's a voter file out there. There's the local Democratic Party. Was there Democratic candidates perhaps that ran for trustee and didn't perhaps get there? I would reach out to them to make sure that they're representative and their voices are heard. I think your community is very manageable. It's not 20,000 people, we're talking about 10,000. And of that, we're looking at about 4,000 active people. So, but if I were in your shoes, I would do that. I'd reach out to who's leading the Democratic Party in the Monument community. Go have a cup of coffee with them and talk about it. Reach out to those progressives, moderates, wherever they are on the spectrum, and ask them to run. And now, granted, exactly how it works, and I'm not an attorney on this matter, but whether they'll be elected or not, hey, at least ask for their input and so forth. And even if they may not if they're not elected based on the partisanship makeup of Monument, where does it say that you can't have them attending meetings in an open forum as you consider the charter? I would bend over backwards and suggest that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Flaherty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and trustees. You all have a good evening, and we will see you soon.
Okay, next item on the agenda, ordinance number 26/2021. Mr. Ricci.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. This is regarding an ordinance submitting to the voters of the town of Monument a ballot issue permitting the town to collect, retain, and spend the full amount of town revenues. The main issue that's going to come before you here, based upon previous discussions, is the length of time for that. And so the background on this is that the Taxpayer Bill of Rights of the Colorado Constitution requires voter approval for all changes in tax rates. Additionally, Tabor also allows voters to opt in or out of a statewide formula limiting town revenue that's already been approved. Local voters can retain control over locally approved revenue by voting not to apply a statewide Tabor formula indexing permissible revenue to the Denver metro area rate of inflation and taxable property value changes. This allows the town to collect and retain the revenue generated by voter-approved taxes in a method and at the rate approved by voters. Taxes are not raised by exempting town revenues from the Tabor formula. The option to exempt local revenues from statewide Tabor formulas has been very popular with voters, both statewide and locally. Most Colorado residents live in a municipality or a county that has voted to exempt some or all local revenues from the statutory formula, according to the Colorado Municipal League and the Bell Policy Center. Monument voters have voted to exempt the town from the statutory formula 6 times since 1996 and have never failed to approve the exemption on the existing source of revenue for 25 years. Voters have also elected to exempt all new revenue approvals from the Tabor formula. Monument has previously asked for the exemption of local revenues from the Tabor formula in 1-year or 4-year increments, which have been approved each time by town voters. The attached ballot issue exempts town revenues for 12 years from the formula and dedicates any revenue that would be considered excess under the formula to fund road construction and maintenance. The fiscal impact here is that if approving the ballot issue, if voters approve the ballot issue, it will not raise taxes. It is not permissible to predict, it's not possible, I should say, to predict future revenues and limits. Therefore, an amount of revenue retained is not possible to determine long term. However, by permitting the town to retain revenue from all sources, the town will have the ability to effectively budget for continued road improvements and maintenance. The staff recommendation is to approve Ordinance 2621. And I also wanted to mention to you, I sent as a working document to each board member various versions of this ordinance with various different years. They are all exactly the same, except for changing the number of years for which the ordinance would refer to the voters an exemption. And so if you all, it's listed as 12, but if you want to change it, we can very easily do that. I have many copies of the ordinance with just different numbers of years if you would like to change the number instead of 12. So please let us know.
You realize the board direction was to leave the years blank?
So leaving the years blank creates some issues as far as making sure that we get it timely drafted correctly. So what we have is as many options, and I have a template that we can move forward with if we need to. So I apologize on blanks.
This is a public hearing item, so I will open it up to the public for anyone who would like to make public comment. Mr. Anderson, do we have anybody online wanting to make comment for or against this item? Do we have anyone in person that would like to make comment on this item? Seeing none, I will keep the public comment period open momentarily and bring it back to the board for discussion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was recently in the town hall where someone made the comment that in the last referendum that we put on there, it was very difficult to understand. And so in principle, I'm okay with the concept that's going on here, but I also would like to make changes as far as readability is concerned. My proposed changes, I understand the first part of the referendum, shall the town of Monument, Colorado, without creating any new taxes or increases, any current taxes, be authorized to collect, retain, expend in full amount of town revenue generated from all sources during, so I understand that's legally required by Tabor. During fiscal years 2021 through 2032. That is the time frame that may be in dispute here, and I'm open. I think 12 years are fine, but I'm open to whatever you guys want to do in that regards. And then it goes on and says, limitations shall be calculated without regard to the limitations of Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, or CRS Section 29-1301. And again, I understand that is a legal requirement to put that in there. But what I have dispute with is the remaining portion where it describes what we're going to do with the money. It reads, such amounts to constitute voter approved revenue changes with the amounts that would otherwise be in excess of such limitations to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance. To me, that's very difficult to understand, and I would prefer to have it say, and such excesses amounts shall be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance. It's a lot simpler and a lot straightforward. I think I would recommend that we change that last, I don't know if you call it phrase or semi-sentence, so that it would be less wordy.
Mr. Ricci, do you have any legal requirements of why that couldn't be changed to streamline the verbiage?
I believe we can streamline the verbiage. However, we do need to indicate that it is a voter-approved revenue change, that the amounts switched from being under the Tabor formula to not being under the Tabor formula is a voter-approved revenue change.
Okay.
That is a Tabor requirement, and we ran this by we included Mr. Dahl in this, Jerry Dahl in this conversation, and this is the language that he helped us come up with, based upon is like, all right, you need this, and you need this. So such amounts to constitute a voter-approved revenue change.
Such excess amounts
Such-
to,
Yeah, then in that case, can't you take out change with the amounts that would be otherwise in excess of such limitations?
right, yeah, that's the whole thing, is you strike that line and you can just say, such excess amounts to constitute voter-approved revenue changes to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance.
Such excess amounts to constitute voter-approved revenue changes.
It actually just says such amounts.
Yeah, but if you say excess amounts, then you don't need to say otherwise be in excess of
Oh, I
such
see what you're saying.
limitations. You can
You
cut
get
all
to
that.
Take out that whole
Yeah,
sentence.
Commissioner, such excess amounts to constitute voter-approved.
revenue changes
Mhm.
to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance.
Apologize. Give me just 1 second. I think we need to add.
Because I know personally, if I see something that is confusing, I just would vote no on it, because you wonder if it's done deliberately to confuse the public or whatever. And, hoping that it'll sneak something past us. So I personally feel that the simpler we can make this and the more straightforward we can make this, that everybody reads it and gets it, the better off it's going to come across.
Okay. I would change it to make sure we are still referencing limitations. So such excess amounts over aforesaid limitations to constitute voter-approved revenue changes to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance. That way, we're referencing back to Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, or NCRS 2931. Such excess amounts over aforesaid limitations.
Okay, well, that's simpler than what we've got now. So, I mean,
I'm trying to make it as simple as possible while still keeping in the verbiage I think we need to satisfy Tabor itself.
okay.
So with the conclusion you've come to on that, is it making it any shorter?
It did take out a full line.
What line was that?
So I'm going to pull them up next to each other here real quick.
With the amounts that would otherwise be in. And then of such. We took that out.
But you just said we have to state that it was excess of limitations.
Right.
That's correct. And so we changed that up. So instead of putting the full line there saying referencing limitations, and instead of saying with the amounts that would otherwise be in excess of such limitations, instead of saying that, we are instead saying such excess amounts over aforesaid limitations to constitute a voter-approved revenue changes to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance.
Okay. I think that's a little simpler than what we have here. So,
And again, this was the discussion with Mr. Dahl was, all right, we want to make this as short and readable as permissible under Tabor and the Colorado laws here.
What is Tabor and Mr. Dahl, what is it saying that it's requiring? What is the requirements?
So
Voter approved revenues.
yeah, you have to end. So what we're trying to do here is we have to tell the voters under Tabor that if we have excess revenues, if we have revenues in excess of the limitations, they're approving as a revenue change that to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance. I mean, that's what Tabor is making us say, is we have to say there's an excess amount. We have to say it's over the limitations, and then what we're going to use it for. And again,
Most people aren't going to figure out what limitations means in this.
well, most people don't understand Article, CRS Section 2930 and Article 10, Section 20, but I understand that's required by law.
So you have to mention the articles and the sections. Can you describe limitations in this a little bit more clearly? It seems very, I don't know the right word to describe it, but that term being limitations, that's referencing to the limitations of the Tabor Act. Is that what that's saying? Of the limitations bound by what needs to be given back over a certain limit?
yes. So
Okay.
it's indicating any limitations that are contained in Article 10, Section 20 and 29.1.301, that there may be excess amounts under those limitations. So that's what it's referencing back to. And I think the issue is, I think it's the full amount of town revenues generated from all sources. So we may be
You
able to tie
already
it
said
back
that
that
up
way.
above.
But I'm saying I think we may be able to tie it back through some language if that's making it clear.
When does this language need to be done to be on the ballot? Laura? Do you know that best?
July 19th would be optimum.
Okay. Can we work on this a little bit more between now
Okay.
and July 19th? Or what do you think?
Yeah, what's the appropriate form? Do we need a workshop, or do we just need to have us, one or two of us get together and? Yes, we're just trying to make it where it's not confusing, that everybody can understand that we have an excess amount that's going to be used for road and construction and maintenance, and exclusively for road construction and maintenance. And that's really what we need to communicate as clearly as possible.
Because the problem is that this is what happened with the police sales tax. And then we had Magellan come back and show us that the public's greatly in favor of it, but it failed dismally because it was written in such poor form. So we don't want to rerun this.
Right. And I would rather take the risk of having it clear and concise and and
And-
then later on have to deal with whatever the ramifications are. I don't know what are the possible ramifications that could happen in a situation if it's clear and understandable. I think there would be less ramifications than if it's confusing.
Well, I think the ramifications are somebody calling out the Tabor guidelines, saying that this doesn't work with Tabor, when what we're trying to say is, hey, we found a legal workaround Tabor. That's what we're saying. That we're doing this in spite of Tabor because of Tabor.
Well, I want
Does that make sense?
Now you're sounding like the language here.
I want
Now you sound like
I
an
want-
attorney.
I want to check the boxes of what we need to do, but I mean, certainly it could be verbalized in a way that people would understand.
Right.
So instead of saying about, approved revenue changes, amounts, otherwise excess of such limitations and before that, limitations of just say, hey, what we're saying is that I don't know how to just say it simply, where you say, currently we're required to give back money over a certain limit that we're asking that we can keep and use toward road construction. Why can't
So,
you say it like that?
I think
So,
I think a better question to ask is this passed the past 6 times. How does this language compare to the last 6 times it passed?
it is shorter.
It is shorter. So how
May I
do
give
we
another?
want to continue picking it apart when we actually have less than we've had before, language-wise? Or do we put some faith that our residents know what Tabor is and how it works?
Read again what we just changed. Read
well,
that one more time.
And I was actually trying to make it a little clearer. If I may give you one more example that I think puts in some transitions with the changes you suggested. So after it says, without regard to the limitations of Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution or CRS 29-1-301, any excess amounts over the above limitations to constitute a voter-approved revenue change with excess funds to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance. And I think we could also, if it made it more sense, say any excess amounts over the above limitations to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance, and then put the constituting a voter-approved revenue change. So we could put that at the very end so that we're not breaking up the excess and then what we're using it for.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
So it would then read, okay, so any excess amounts over the above limitations, and then have it say, any excess amounts over the above limitations to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance. And then say such changes to constitute a voter-approved revenue change.
Okay, I think that's more straightforward.
So it would read, any excess amounts over the above limitations to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance, comma, such changes to constitute a voter-approved revenue changes. A voter-approved revenue change, not changes. Voter-approved revenue change.
Yeah, I think that makes it clear. I'm sorry, I know that this is passed, or this similar language is passed in the past, but I also know that in the police referendum, it did not pass, and most people said because it was too confusing. So I'm kind of weighing the two, and that's why I'm kind of being a bit of a stickler on this. Sorry to hold us here.
No, you're fine.
We want it right.
We agree.
Before we go on, Mr. Anderson, is there anybody online that would like to comment? Okay, at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this item and for board further discussion. Ms. Ohms, I have a question for you on this. There's no lines here. Fiscal years 21 through 32, with fiscal year 32 dollar amounts used as the baseline upon which fiscal year 33 limitations shall be calculated. So you mentioned, I believe in a previous email that we had, that you'll be calculating them every year. Is that correct?
We will be, because we'll need to know how much we're over in order to make sure we're putting all of that extra overage dollars towards road construction and maintenance, like it says. But what this is saying is that when we get to year 33, because we've been debrucing for these 12 years, that the revenue that we've earned in 2032 now becomes the base year that the increased percentages are calculated off of for 33 of what's allowed if we don't go back and debruce again.
Versus 21.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's so that we're not losing 10 years of increases that all of a sudden now we're moving way backwards from our base. It basically is resetting the base,
Yeah.
starts a new base at the end of the debrucing period for the moving forward years.
Okay. Thank you. The only issue I have, well, I have all sorts of issues with this and Tabor, but the main one with this ordinance is the 12 years. I think that's, to me, and I understand some of my fellow board members see it differently. I think 12 years is giving way too long for just a free ride for the town. This should be, I think, addressed at most 4 years at a time.
Well, given the fact that we have, what was it, about $400,000 from this last year that we would, or no, projected 400,000 for this year. Excuse me, projected $400,000 for this year that would go into road construction. My understanding, we have a $12 million budget on the widening of Jackson Creek or somewhere in that ballpark. So 400,000 would only get us, 25 feet down the road. So I think we're just putting it in the kitty, which is what I like here. We got it in a road construction, account or whatever, however it's being segregated. I don't think that in 4 years, we're going to have enough to widen Jackson Creek. I could be wrong. Maybe we get a windfall that we don't expect, but I would at least like to see 8.
I would hope it wouldn't depend on overages, and it would depend on budgeting more than what we're going to guesstimate our overages being.
Yeah, and that's, anybody's guess as to, what our budget's going to be. But basically what we're saying is we're committing those overages to this account. And then, I don't know, last time we had a supplemental items on the thing that we all debated, because that was kind of I don't know if it was our overages or money that we had not spent, that we had scheduled to spend in the prior year.
It was just money that we were calculating that would be over what we had spent the year before. So we had the option to either put that into our reserves or either have you spend it on supplemental items. And have less money go into the reserves.
So would that money now go into the road construction, if this passes, the road maintenance?
Any money over our Tabor limits would go into the capital projects fund, which would go to roads, construction and maintenance.
So Tabor rules only allow it's on your actual revenue, not what's budgeted.
Right.
And actual year over year is only allowed to increase by a certain percentage. And that percentage is based on the inflation from the Denver area.
Right.
And any local growth that we have. So potentially what we weren't over our Tabor limit for 2020. So that money that we were talking about adding into the 2021 budget that you gave to supplemental items,
right,
was basically, we had talked about trying to grow our reserve. And so we basically came to you with, if you want your reserve to be around X% for this year, this is the extra money that you can spend. we weren't over the Tabor limit. So
Right.
this would be going forward, if we're over, we might still have some money to work with on the supplemental. But then this would be money in excess of what we're allowed to keep per Tabor that would specifically be going to the capital projects fund to pay for the road projects.
Right. And if we so chose, we could designate the supplemental budget for next year into the road, to add it into the road construction budget.
Yes, that would be your choice.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So, and that's my, part of my point behind only doing 4 years, because we may go the next 3 years without going over. I mean, we're talking about $400,000 for this year. Originally, last year, I want to say we talked about $200,000 or $300,000, and ended up we did not have any overage.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wouldn't have an issue with 8 years. So,
I'm good with 8 years. I would like to hear from Trustee Clark's constituents, though. Since they've made it clear that they want all their money back. So if any could stand up and please speak to us about this.
I've already closed the public hearing.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure that they got heard.
Okay.
so
So,
are you comfortable with 8 years?
no.
Okay.
I just, my comments, I do support what the concept behind Tabor. I do not support the way it is, the way it works with municipalities. That's clearly was not a good part of the construction of it. The town of Monuments growth being measured against a Denver Boulder number does not make any sense for any sort of local or rural municipality. Again, I'm happy to support 4 years, but that's just my perspective on this ordinance.
Could I get more clarification, Ms. Ooms, about what he's speaking to on us being judged by Denver? You mentioned Denver inflation. He's mentioning Boulder numbers and other things. Can you clarify that for me?
Sure. So how the Tabor is calculated year over year, the max that you can increase from your prior year revenues is based on 2 inflationary numbers. One of them is I think it's technically now Denver, Lakewood, Aurora inflation rate that's given out by the Department of Labor. That's actually in the Tabor documents. That's the percentage that's used. And then the other percentage is an additional increase in real property taxable values locally. So there's 2 pieces. So between the 2, I think for 2020, the increase for Denver was like 1.951, and the local growth rate was 6.2.
And that's written into Tabor with that as the variable, as the,
Correct.
okay, like.
But the
like-
issue is we don't know what those are basically until the year's over.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah, but we can't change what it's based on.
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And just to clarify, the U.S. Department, the U.S. Labor Department creates a CPI number, Consumer Price Index, and they survey cities all across the country. And the only locality that's surveyed in the state of Colorado is the area that she just mentioned, the Denver, I forget, what was
It
it?
used to be called Denver Boulder, but I think now it's Denver Lakewood Aurora. It's the same number. It's just now they've expanded the title.
And you're correct. It's the only one that we'll get any data from in a reasonable period of time. I mean, they may determine it for other places, but it's not one that's automatically and quickly calculated.
So yeah, it's a standardized system that's used by the U.S. Labor Department, and but it's only tallied in that area. So that's the closest to our area that we can come. Rather than using California and New York, I'd rather use Denver.
I understand now. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, we'll look for any motions to modify.
I move to modify ordinance number 26, 2021, an ordinance submitting to the voters of the town Town of Monument of Colorado, a ballot issue permitting the town to collect, retain, and spend a full amount of the town revenues for 12 years and setting the ballot title and ballot issue. I'd like to modify that to 8 years along with the, do I need to make a motion about the verbiage we already changed or not?
I have already made that change, and so what I will do is I will print it, I will hand it out, and then I will say,
So then
we'll
my
read the title.
motion to change is the time period then, not what you did.
How about you quote the bottom change so that it's on the record? And then he can move as mentioned.
Sorry, the ordinance would be changed to an ordinance submitting to the voters of the town of Monument, Colorado, a ballot issue permitting the town to collect, retain, and spend the full amount of town revenues for 8 years and setting the ballot title and ballot issue. And the other substantive change beyond years listed is that the last portion shall read, any excess amounts over the above limitations to be used exclusively for road construction and maintenance, such changes to constitute a voter-approved revenue change.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee LaKind,
Yes.
Trustee Romanella,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
No. That motion passes 3-1. Item.
Point of order, don't we need 4?
Oh.
In order to pass?
You have a
It's a-
majority of the quorum.
It's a majority of the board.
Ah, okay.
And that suffices for motion to modify and motion to pass? Okay. Okay, resolution 5A, resolution number 39, 2021, a resolution of,
Point of order, we just made the amendment. Have we actually passed the?
no, that's what I was just
then-
asking him. We made a motion to modify, approving as modified.
Oh, so we also made the motion to approve it as modified.
That was my understanding. If you would like to clarify and motion to pass it, you may
That's
do
what
so.
that's what I thought I moved.
Okay, I apologize.
Okay, so we're good. Okay, resolution number, we sure? Good? Okay.
Attorney says it's good. It's good.
Resolution number 39-2021, a resolution approving a contract with A1 Chip Seal. Mr. Tharnish.
Yes, good evening, trustees. The resolution you have in front of you tonight is to approve a chip seal contract with A1 Chip Seal. The road selected for this year due to our limited budget is going to be 3rd Street. And that project will occur sometime after the 4th of July events, so that we don't have any road issues prior to the parade route. 3rd Street is a major portion of that parade. The A1 Chip Seal has done many chip seal projects for us over the year, and by taking advantage of their bids that they've occurred with neighboring governmental bodies, we were able to get the same pricing as similar cities, and therefore saving money when it comes to these type of projects. Take any questions that you would have.
So this will be done in a week or 2? Is that's the
Oh, I
time?
believe it'll be done sooner than that, but it won't start till after the 4th of July events, probably the week after.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We have to see when their schedule and the weather and all that.
Okay.
And this was approved in capital projects.
It's under the paving, capital fund paving projects. Chip seal and paving fall under the same heading.
Okay.
There's a small portion that'll be done on Knollwood, where some of their warranty work that they did, I can't remember, it was the last year or the year before, they have to come and redo. We're going to have them continue a little further past that, and that's why on the documents here, it says Cape Seal, 3rd Street, and Knollwood, parentheses, past warranty. That's just a location marker as to where they ended.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve resolution number 39, 2021, a resolution approving contract with A1 Chip Seal for the capital chip seal projects.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee LaKind,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Romanella.
Yes.
That motion passes 4-0. Resolution number 40, 2021, a resolution appointing Town of Monument Board of Trustees remote participation policy. Ms. Hogan.
Prior to the last board meeting, we had a workshop and staff was given direction to draft a remote participation policy, which has been attached to the board packet for your review. And this draft policy outlines guidelines for both emergency and non-emergency situations. And the biggest change would be that it indicates that board members attending remotely may not participate in or vote on quasi-judicial matters. And it also limits the remote participation of board members to 4 times per calendar year. And I'm available if you have additional questions.
Okay, most of this we discussed in our workshop, like Ms. Hogan mentioned. Is there any further questions?
Is that once a quarter then, or it can be 4 times in a quarter and then
It's
no more for the year, or how
in-
is that?
Any calendar year.
So it doesn't matter.
So you can be gone for 4 meetings in a row and that's it for the year.
I think it should be smaller. I think it should be 2.
Okay. Other questions or comments by the board?
I'm good with 4 the way it stands.
Okay. I'm good with 4 also. Trustee Mitch or Trustee LaKind?
I'm good with 4 as well.
Okay.
Being this is a calendar year issue, then could we, and this will go into effect now, and there's been so much absenceism already, could we limit the rest of this year to 2?
I'm okay with that. Or okay.
Well, I mean, the
We
earlier part of
rewrite
the
it.
year, we were still kind of in COVID. So we didn't.
But it's
release-
essentially the same though.
Pardon me?
It's essentially the same rather than having 4 more absences in 6 months.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so for the balance of this year, 2, and then going to 4 starting in,
Okay.
Yeah.
that's
You'd have to change the language, I'm assuming, to indicate that, right? To approve a prorated amount for this year.
I think the policy would still be intact. You could just make a motion
to
to amend it to
add that
approve the policy, approve the resolution with the policy attached, but limit the 2021 calendar year to the remaining portion of the 2021 calendar year to 2 absences, and that'll be reflected in the minutes, and it will be fine.
Okay.
Are you guys in support of that?
I am. I had another question, but now I can't find where it was. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion approving the resolution with the remainder of this year only allowing for 2 absences?
I make a motion to approve resolution 40-2021, a resolution adopting the Town of Monument Board of Trustees remote participation policy
Second?
as modified.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Romanella,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee LaKind,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Ms. Hogan, do you feel that was clarified in the meeting minutes on record?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
The motion passes 4-0. Resolution number 41, 2021, a resolution approving the revised Town of Monument fee schedule.
Yep.
Ms. Flynn.
Good evening, Mayor Wilson and trustees. The Planning Department is requesting approval to update the Planning Department's fee schedule regarding the zoning, subdivision, and other fees. To provide better customer service, the Planning Department is providing the applicant with flat fees rather than providing a calculation to determine their fee. Also, the retainer fees will be omitted from the fee schedule. However, town staff will invoice the applicant for any outside engineering fees. The updated fees correlate with the fees from the passage of Ordinance 25/2021. This resolution shall take effect upon effective date of Ordinance 25/2021 for July 16th, 2021. These fees are slightly increased, but not overly increased. The highest increase is by $500. The lowest increase is by $250. And there's slightly new fees on here because of the passing of the Land Development Code. And the Housing and Building Association also approved these fees during the Land Development Code rewrite process. And I'm happy to bring up the land development fee comparison table that I provided in the packet if you would like me to go over any of the difference of the fees.
Why did the HBA representatives leave before this?
They recently had to leave, but they gave their approval. And Tim's still here. He's on HBA as well. Tim McConnell's here as well.
So one person got stuck with it. Board members, you've seen this a couple times. Questions or comments for Ms. Flynn?
On a percentage basis, how much would you say the increase is?
As the highest increase is $500. I don't have a percentage per se because it depends on the acreage of the land development that's being proposed. We had properties that we had to figure out a calculation for, and it was very confusing to applicant and new staff that came in to figure these fees out. So we were trying to do a flat fee, which is more convenient for the applicant and staff. But I don't have a percentage. It depends on the acreage of land that's being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comment, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve resolutions number 41, 2021, a resolution approving a revised Town of Monument fee schedule.
I second.
We have a second, motion and a second. Ms. Hogan, please.
Trustee Romanello,
Yes.
Trustee LeKind,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Item 6, discussion items. IGA with El Paso County, Mr. Foreman.
As many of you know that I've discussed with you over the past several years, El Paso County staff has requested that the Town of Monument annex the bridge and roadway between the roundabout on Baptist Road and the edge of Willow Springs. Several times they've mentioned holding up the access permit to Willow Springs. And recently they've come to the Town of Monument with a solution that might include both sides of the bridge, but not include the bridge. As late as last week, we had a meeting with Jennifer Irvine and the attorney for the El Paso County. And I'm going to have Megan Harrington kind of review some of the things went on that meeting and some of the concerns by our staff. Megan?
There's no better way to start to learn than trial by fire. So I'm going to try to explain some of this to you. And of course, I think Debbie and Mike are going to pitch in and help if I miss any of the detail. But what I would like to do, just to start the conversation, is just share with you the map of exactly what we're talking about here, so you can get a better understanding of the area and the conversation. So I believe we have where my pointer is here, getting used to the technology. That's in the area of the bridge. So we're talking about everything west of the roundabout. The conversation with the county has been, except for the bridge and then continuing Baptist Road to Forest Lakes Road, in about the general location where I've placed my pointer, where that is a future planned school site. And that is the entire length there along Forest Lakes Drive that is the Willow Springs Ranch development. So we have approved annexation, sketch plan, and PUD site plan for Willow Springs. The conversations recently with El Paso County are that, as I understand, and I think the conversations also predate Mr. Foreman and Debbie, there were some conversations in general at the time of annexation that the town of Monument should take this section of roadway, ownership and maintenance of the roadway. And my understanding is the conversation was always to exclude the bridge. And from our conversation recently with the county, that dialogue goes back several years. On Friday, when we met with the county, because as I'm in my first week, I of course had a few questions about the process, and we met with the county engineer and their legal representation. The ask, I guess, is to for the town to take ownership of the road by deed on each side of the bridge. The county will keep ownership and maintenance of the bridge for a defined period of time, of which they recommend adding that information into the IGA. So there would be triggers within the IGA that will determine when the town would then take ownership and maintenance of the bridge. Their proposal is that the IGA be entered into sooner rather than later, dates here in July, and that the IGA specify again that the town take the roadway by deed except for the bridge, and that the language include the triggers. As I'm starting to learn a little bit more about Monument and development around the town of Monument, we did ask the county engineer a little for information about why the timing of now. Willow Springs development is in the very initial phases, I believe, of construction. And we were told on the call that the access points that were approved on the PD site plan do not meet county standards, and that there is some fear of the county of what construction traffic would do to the roadway. Unfortunately, we are still waiting for the county engineer to get back to us on how the access points do not meet county standard. They did not have that information for us in the meeting. So she is reviewing the approved PD site plan. We provided that to her on Friday, along with comments that the town had received in early 2020 when the PD site plan was approved. There are comments from El Paso County engineering that basically state that all of their comments are addressed, and what we infer to mean that the access points are acceptable to the county. So I think where we stand as of the end of the day Friday is with the county reviewing that PD site plan, giving us more information on how the access points do not meet their standards and what we can do to bring those access points into meeting the standards. As far as timing, they really haven't given any clarity on why the timing needs to be now. We do know that Forest Lakes has approximately 512 units on the ground and planned, whereas Willow Springs will have approximately 399. Got that number right, 399 units. So we're looking to find a better solution on timing.
Some of the concerns I've told you in the past is that, Willow Springs hasn't even started building a house today, and they want to give us the bridge. They already How many homes does Forest Lakes have on the ground out of the 512? I know they started phase 2.
And now the county engineer on Friday did mention she thought it was 400 and she brought up the number 475. So perhaps that was 475 on the ground or platted lots with perhaps more platted lots or homes coming online over that. 450, oh, she was close, 452 in phases 1 and 2.
So we've got that many, and then you've also got a lot of people that live out in the county that have to use that road. So, there's probably 100 or 200 people out there. So the numbers just don't add up right now for us. They're wanting us to annex a bridge and the roadway that really leads to Forest Lakes. They want to hold up access points for Willow Springs when we have documents showing that we believe that those access points have already been approved by the county. And so until we get some clarity on these issues, I don't feel comfortable bringing the board an IGA.
Ms. Harrington, is there any way you can zoom in on that picture at all? Well, I was hoping we could all see it at the same time.
So I have a question. Now, the discussion on this was that the county keeps the bridge and we take over the roads that they don't like.
No, we just have the roads on both sides of the bridge. So
Right.
from the roundabout to the bridge, and then from the west side of the bridge to the, I guess, the western line of Willow Springs.
But they don't like the roads.
What?
They don't like the roads because they say they don't meet standards.
No, the
No, it's
access
the
points.
access
points
They're,
for
they're
Willow
quoting
Springs.
that the access points to Willow Springs didn't meet the standards that they had proposed. But
So-
we have documents saying that in 2020 they did.
Okay.
So minus that, just to add clarity to it, down there where it says Baptist Road in the bottom left corner is the bridge, or bottom right corner, excuse me.
Mhm.
Everything after that up to where it kind of makes that dirt. Yes, right there. They want us to take possession of that, even though all those houses along there on the south side of that line only pay county
Exactly.
mills.
sir.
They don't pay into the
They
town.
don't pay into the
So we don't
county.
get any revenues out of those to maintain their road. We just do it as a favor to the county.
Exactly. They get to use
Plus,
the
there's
road.
going to be construction in that area, so I
It-
guess the
the-
heavy
yeah, right.
equipment's going to tear up the road, meaning we'll be liable for that extra wear and tear.
Exactly.
Am I just seeing
Please.
this as,
Oh, go ahead.
this just seems like they're trying to dump an expense on us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line.
And one of the reasons why we brought Megan on was Megan's dealt with this in Colorado Springs with the county already, correct?
Yes, and there is the aspect of Willow Springs development wanting to move forward and not having those access permits through the county, but then also the correct and appropriate timing of the IGA and what that liability is for the town of Monument. And I know that Tim McConnell is here listening this evening in the audience, and he is a consultant representing the Willow Springs developer. I don't know if he has additional information or how your proceedings typically work. But the county stipulations for their proposed stipulations for when Monument would take the bridge included, future timing, year certain, future annexation of Forest Lakes, and perhaps future traffic study or license plate count as a trigger for taking the bridge. Our question to the county was, why would those not be appropriate triggers for taking the roadway segment as a whole?
This is kind of an orthodox, but Mr. McConnell, did you have a comment to make on that? Is the board okay with him making comment on this? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Mayor, trustees, thank you. Tim McConnell with Drexel Brill. We are the civil engineer consultant for Willow Springs Ranch. And what's been brought up here already, just repeat it. The town approved the PD site plan sketch plan was approved. These access points were approved at that point in time. And as Mike has mentioned, the county review comments indicated that it was approved at that time with them as well. So we've been working on that result going forward, proceeding with final plat documents, construction documents, and everything else to this date. I actually have the approved roadway plans in my chair that Debbie just gave me earlier before the meeting here. The developer is trying to work with the town and the county to get this resolved as well. We made the water interconnect between Forest Lakes that helping the town out as well. They've already paid a cost recovery to Classic. Classic had filed a cost recovery on the portion of Forest Lakes Drive along the Willow Springs Ranch. Didn't really have to go along with that because the cost recovery agreement with the county had some faults to it, but they paid some cost recovery fees to Classic to pay for the portion of the road that Classic built along the Willow Springs Ranch frontage. I think the developer is also willing, the Willow Springs Ranch property as a metro district, they'd be willing to help out, I think, with some of the maintenance. Mike has mentioned that previously too, of the roadway going forward. If that's the case, may need to look at the district service plan with that to help with that going forward. But at this point, we're kind of in a bind. We've been working with the county engineer. Megan has indicated since back in December or January, trying to resolve this issue and not really getting anywhere with the county. I understand where you guys are. Some traffic is going to be Town of Monument. Some traffic would be the county. Where that comes out at the end of the day, I'm not sure. So I understand that bind. But at this point, we're ready to start putting curb and gutter down in Willow Springs Ranch. And we haven't been allowed by the county to submit the access permit application, which takes a while to get through their process, especially with the COVID delays these days. So we're kind of in a bind to make those connections the last 50 feet from Forest Lakes Drive into the development. We can go and build the development itself, but not have the last bit of road constructed other than maybe right at the existing ranch drive, because that is an historic access point. So it kind of puts us in a bind too. Just wanted to give you some flavor of what we've been going through. I've corresponded with Jennifer Irvine, the county engineer, for the last 6 or 7 months on this, and we really haven't gotten anywhere. It's been a little back and forth with the town and the county, but anything I can do or other questions I might be able to answer, I'd be glad to do that, but I'll give you some flavor.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, can I ask one question of Tim?
Yes.
Tim, approximately, and if you can disclose this, what was the payment that you had to make to Classic Homes?
It was well over $200,000. I couldn't tell you the exact amount. I'd have to check with our client, but I know it was.
And that was for, basically what you understand was for the access.
That was for the cost recovery that Classic had filed with the county on the roadway. Typically, the way the county works and other jurisdictions, you pay for your half of the road, we pay for their half. They were in first, they built it all and filed a recovery to recover some of those funds.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Foreman, do you know what Forest Lakes, the district, handles? Is it just water and sewer?
Water, and sanitation.
So the county is completely responsible at this point for roads.
They are.
And they have not offered
They
to
do
give,
snow plowing.
and they have not offered to forfeit any of those mills for
None whatsoever.
town maintaining it?
We requested that, and I think you know the other requests that I did. That I
Okay.
told them.
As far as this being a discussion item, I think I agree with Mr. Foreman that I don't see this coming before the board until town staff says we have an agreement that the staff can feel comfortable with.
I concur.
So is it your impression that the county's holding up our development because of, because we have the same issue with Higbee Road. We have an emergency access from Promontory Point or somewhere up there, but we can't build a real road because they own that road. So are they doing the same thing here?
I don't want to say that in a public meeting that I feel that way. I think Friday was surprising to their staff that there was a letter from 2020 that the access was already approved by one of their staff members. So I think they're reviewing that. And so I want to wait until that review's done to make any further comment on that. But I hope, my hope is that they will realize that they've already approved these access points and that they'll move forward, and then we'll still have conversations about an IGA. We've sent them a email, a month ago, telling them, we feel like we should annex that road at some point. Megan's mentioned some of those characteristics of those points that we would do. One of them for me would be we'd annex Forest Lakes. If we annex Forest Lakes and all the people out there that are using that road and bridge are members of our community, citizens of our town, then we feel like that's fair.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that to conclude this discussion item, I will say, Mr. Foreman, please let us know as elected officials if there is anybody on their side that we can reach out to and what you need from us to convey to them.
Definitely. And just looking for you to give me direction on bringing an IGA too.
My direction would be when you get a response that you're comfortable with. I mean, you can bring, I guess I misspoke by saying not to bring it to us. If you want to bring an IGA that you completely disagree with to us, that's fine. I don't think it'll go very far.
I think I have my direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we
And
will,
if you feel that you're getting log jammed, let us know and we can maybe talk to some of the county commissioners that can move this along.
Definitely.
I'll reach back out to Jennifer and their legal counsel tomorrow. We did get an email at the end of the day asking for some discussion and dialogue on an acceptable path forward for the town of Monument. And we will respond and say, well, we don't have it yet. And hopefully we can continue the conversation about an IGA with appropriate timing mechanisms for when the town would be in consideration of accepting that roadway and that responsibility.
Okay. Item 7, public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make comment at this time? Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Mr. Anderson, do you have anybody online that would like to make comment? Okay. Sir, would you like another comment?
Tim McConnell again. I probably should have mentioned it earlier. I just want to say Megan was a good hire on your part. I've worked with her for 10 plus years. Very good to work with, collaborative, come up with good solutions on everything. So she's fantastic to work with, and look forward to working with her up here in Monument now. Thank you.
Thank you. Momentarily, we'll move on to board authorization items. We have none from town staff. Do any board members have any authorization requests? Seeing none, we will go back. Mr. Anderson, do you have any hands raised at this time? Okay, we will close the public comment portion of this meeting. Do we have any Board of Trustee comments? Seeing none, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.